Morning everyone. Hi kids. Welcome back to Kids Church. Last week we finished just as Ruth and Naomi were arriving back in Bethlehem. I've tried to imagine what that must have been like for them. It was 10 years since anyone had seen Naomi, and here she was back with a young Moabite woman by her side. I think I would have been feeling a bit nervous. The last verse in Ruth chapter 1 reads, "And they came to Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest." Now that is a really important bit in the story. I've got some barley here. It's my favourite thing in vegetable soup, really good for you. Now there was a law in Israel that said when you were harvesting your grain, which they did by hand because there were no tractors, or even your grapes or your oranges, you were to leave some. You were not allowed to go back and pick up the bits you missed. That was to be left for the poor in the land, and for people who were strangers in the land and passing through. That was for them to eat, so that nobody would go hungry. It was a very good law, and that is where we pick up the story of Ruth today. Naomi and Ruth had arrived in Bethlehem with very little food and very little money. They were poor, but they'd arrived back at the beginning of the barley harvest, and the law allowed the poor to pick up the grain left in the field by the harvesters. Ruth decided to go and collect some food so that they could eat. She ended up working in a field owned by a man named Boaz. When Boaz arrived at the field, he noticed Ruth and asked the harvesters who she was. They told him that she had come back from Moab with Naomi and was collecting grain to feed them both. She'd been working hard all morning. Then Boaz called Ruth over. He told her to come and work every day in his field. He promised Ruth that his men would watch out for her and keep her safe. Ruth asked Boaz why he'd been so kind to her when she was just a stranger from a different country. So Boaz told Ruth what he'd heard, how she'd left her home and her people, and all that she'd done for Naomi. Then Boaz gave Ruth some food and said to her, "The Lord will reward you for all you have done. You will be paid in full by the Lord, the God of Israel. You have come to him as a little bird finds shelter under the wings of its mother." Ruth ate until she was full and then went back to work. Boaz told his workers to pull out some grain and leave it for Ruth to pick up. At the end of the day, Ruth went home to Naomi and showed her the grain she'd collected. Naomi was amazed. So much grain. Naomi asked Ruth where she'd been working. Ruth told her all about Boaz and how kind he'd been to her. Naomi was excited. Boaz was a close relative, and she told Ruth to keep working in his field. Now there's a theme emerging in this story. Back in Moab, when Naomi told her daughters-in-law to return to their people, she blessed them by saying, "May the Lord deal kindly with you, as you have dealt kindly with me." When Boaz inquired about Ruth, the people in Bethlehem reported back the kindness and loving care that Ruth was showing to her mother-in-law. Boaz then showed great kindness toward Ruth, and what we're seeing is a reflection of the loving kindness that God shows towards us. God had lifted up a young woman who should have been despised and rejected by the people of Israel, and he lifted her into a place of honour and respect. All the sadness and grief and bitterness and guilt that had been weighing Naomi down is beginning to lift, and the peace and joy that only God can give is working its way into her heart and mind. But this is only the beginning of what's to come. And you'll have to come back next week to hear what happens next. In the meantime, there are some discussion points for you to work through with your family and a verse to colour in. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding.